Welcome to Abiding Life Studios. I'm Noah Wells. Today I have with me Steve Reinhard.
Hey, Noah.
Hey, how are you?
Great being with you.
And we also have with us special guest, all the way from Alaska, Matthew Doerksen. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you got it. Hi, Noah. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Matthew. It's great to be with you again.
Great to see you guys.
Yeah, lovely seeing you. It's really great to have you join the podcast with Noah and I. And we met a few years ago at one of the men's retreats.
Yeah.
When you came here to all the way from Alaska to Colorado, and you know, one of the things Mike used to say to me, and I'm sure countless others, was, friends aren't made, they're recognized. Friendship's not made, it's recognized. And I feel that way about you. Is like, this guy's like an eternal friend. I've known him all through eternity. Like, we've got a connection, and I recognize that our hearts are one and that we share life together. And so that was such a pleasure to meet you a few years back at that retreat, and then to connect with you and to be together today. So thanks for joining us and coming on this scary podcast with two nutty guys.
Well, thanks for inviting me. It's good. I love you guys.
We love you.
Well, so because Noah just reminded me that today's the 5th or the 11th of May 2020, for any folks that are looking at this or listening to this. And we'd like to give a shout out. We had one of the podcast guests a couple weeks ago, or a month ago maybe now, was Richard Pitts. And we'd just like to sing a shout out to him. I'm about to start crying.
Yeah, I know.
I just appreciate him. I met him at a men's retreat, probably 20 years ago or more. And having him on the podcast with us was such a pleasure. And he since this next week, or this recently, has been, I'm not sure if admitted is the right word, but he's in a hospice. And they had a great big celebration for him in Manhattan, Kansas on Friday, with a parade and a bunch of students and singing and drums and celebrating him and his life. And really, I think you can look at it and you see what they're really celebrating. The things they were saying was they were celebrating Christ in him, which you could see all the beautiful things about him. And I'm not sure that he would say that or not, but that's what it sure seemed like to me.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'd just like to send our love and heartfelt prayers to Richard and his family. And but that being said, let's start with Matthew. And Matthew, you've really gone through quite a bit of, I'm going to say, challenging times over the last, since January, right? Or maybe
Yes.
before, I don't know. And we'd love to hear, what you've gone through and how that's been for you.
Well, thank you, Steve. It has been challenging. It's kind of hard to know where to begin. I guess it's, in my mind, it started right around Valentine's Day. And actually, my wife and I went out for a date. We left our two kids, Esther and Michael, with babysitter, and went to a restaurant and sat down and talked. And she was just really encouraging me to try and be able to grieve, to be able to feel the loss. One of the things that happened years ago was I lost my dad when I was 7. And so that came up, and we were talking about that. And then the next day, the 15th, our son, Michael, who's 7, had a stroke, a really severe stroke. And we didn't know until that it was a stroke until we'd been at the hospital for a little while. Well, actually, when he was admitted, his right arm and right leg were not working. And so that was really scary. And trying to understand what was going on, why it had happened, and then what to do, because it's doctors can only do so much. It's really in God's hands. And so we transferred to another hospital, and they ended up over the course of the next 24 hours, I think. They took off part of the left side of his head to relieve pressure because it was building up. He couldn't talk anymore, and they'd actually put him into a induced coma for a bit. And it was really kind of touch and go as to how it was, what he was going to be able to do. The doctors said that the stroke affected a quarter of his brain. And in that quarter, of course, was the function for his right side, also his speech. And I think it's hard to remember exactly what we were told, but it was something about Michael isn't going to be, pretty much, if for some miraculous reason he would recover to some portion of himself, he'll never be himself. Just be prepared for that. And so that was really hard. And just going through living at the hospital. And this was right at the beginning of February or middle of February. So the quarantine, the whole coronavirus thing hadn't really touched down that much. It was taking its course in China, I think, during that time. So I think it was 3 days after he'd been in the hospital. He also had appendicitis of some sort that may have triggered the whole thing. Anyway, we were told he had moya disease, which affects the blood flow to the top of the brain. And there's some bypass surgery that can be done if they know about it in time, which they didn't. But my wife was with him nonstop throughout the time. My daughter and myself stayed with friends, and we'd go to the hospital every day. But I think it was the third day he started waking up some and actually started moving his left hand some. And from there, it's just been some miracles. And God has really brought us out of the hospital. And yeah, he's actually starting to actually move his right leg and arm and even do some walking a little bit. It's really like we're having to teach him how to walk all over again and how to crawl. But one of the many miracles is that he's his own honorary self. His mind, his personality hasn't changed. And I mean, he'll pick up our phones and just chuck them or hide them. It's like, I don't want you guys on your phone. Pay attention to me.
Yeah. Can he talk now, Matthew?
Yeah, as much as, because Michael, to go back before this time, he has Down syndrome. And that was a huge surprise to us at birth. Nobody knew. And so his talking has always been a little rudimentary. Not something that we can understand, we've done speech therapy with him and
Mm-hmm.
things, but we did notice that when he was starting to come back in the hospital, that the talking that he was doing seemed to be clearer than prior to the stroke.
Wow.
So we were wondering how much this loss of blood to the left side was affecting the speech throughout the last, 6 months or a year. I really don't know. So.
Has Michael had any other health issues besides the stroke?
Yes. When he was born, he had 3 holes in his heart.
Okay.
And so at 5 months old, we went down to Portland and had that fixed. And since then, there's been no issues, but it's always, I think there's always been a little fear as to what might happen.
Yeah, what's
I don't
around the
know.
corner?
Yeah. And so like when Alicia called me that Saturday and said, I need you to come home. Michael's not doing good. I mean, it wasn't very clear. She thought he had appendicitis, which he did, but he'd had a stroke, and that was the thing that wasn't working so well with his brain.
Right.
But yeah, that was really scary.
So could we just back up a little bit and maybe tell us what it was like? Because you mentioned it was scary and really hard when you were living at the hospital there. Like what, if you want to, if you don't want to, that's fine too, Matthew. I just wondering what thoughts were going through your mind? What other feelings of being, were you having?
I think as we saw him lying there, and I could tell his speech was starting to go. He couldn't say his sister's name. And that's something he said a lot. He loves his sister very much, and she loves him. But he couldn't say Esther. And I realized it was starting to slur, his speech was. And it was it's like shock. It's just like, how is this happening? Why? What is going on? And why would this happen? And then I know that during the course of probably a month, probably like 34 days, my daughter and I only went home twice. The rest of the time we spent with relatives or friends near the hospital. But the first night after the stroke, we went home, my daughter and I walked in the house, and just everywhere I could see little Michael, and he's very active. He dances, he runs, he just loves life. And anyone that sees him, it's infectious. His smile, everything. I can't describe it. And I just walked in the house, and I was just seeing him everywhere, his dancing, and just realizing that his right side wasn't working. And it was like I had this sense in me that God couldn't leave Michael on this earth in a state where he couldn't dance. It was like God was going to take him home. And I walked into his room, and I was just crying. It was this doll. He had this doll and like a week before this happened to him, his doll either threw it off the porch or something, and the left side of its head split, and like Esther glued it back together or whatnot. And I was just standing there looking at this doll, and I'm like, this doll, that's just what Michael went through. The left side of it's like, and I was just just weeping. Poor Esther. She didn't know quite what to do with all that. I was just trying to impress on her mind. And I told her just to get into her mind what she's 11 and she's really smart. But strokes are not easy to understand. And I think God gave me a little picture. I said, Esther, when there's a house and all the lights are on, and then you just start turning all the lights off, at night, and then pretty soon it's just dark. And I said, I think that's what's happening with Michael. It's like the little lights, they're just all turning off one by one in all the rooms. His right side, the speech, and I think it made an impression, and she was able to cry. But yeah, it was extremely hard. I just felt like God was going to take him home because he had too much joy in Michael dancing to not let him dance here on earth again. And so with all these miracles and Michael, learning how to walk again, I mean, you can just see him. He wants to dance again. He hears some music and he starts moving around. So we'll keep you updated on that.
Yeah, it'd be great to get a video of him dancing. Oh, thanks for telling us about that. I have a hard time imagining how difficult that would be to see somebody who you love watch dancing and saying Esther's name, to not be able to say her name and not be able to dance and have appendicitis, and you guys you think you had it but not know it, and then a stroke, and not be able to move his arms and leg, and and then how I like the story about how you were able to shift gears and say God couldn't leave Michael in a state where he couldn't dance. That's pretty beautiful.
Yeah, and I know during that time, Esther was talking to God, and I know Alicia asked how she was. My wife, Alicia, or Iba, asked Esther how she was doing, and Esther said, I'm doing good. And Alicia was a little dubious and questioned her a little bit. And Esther said, yeah, Mom, I just prayed and talked to Jesus, and I just asked him to make Michael happy. And if it means Michael's going to go home to be with him to be happy, then that's what's going to happen. And I was like, wow. It's because Michael is a big part of her life. We only have 2 kids. And it's yeah.
So how many weeks was Michael in the hospital?
He was in the hospital for a little over 4 weeks. During that time, they took out this section of his brain, pretty good size chunk, or not his brain, his skull flap, they call it. And then to basically allow the brain to heal from the stroke because it was swelling. And he was pretty swollen, got really swollen up. And then we were scheduled to go to Seattle for therapy because he was doing so well. There was some movement in the right side, more reflex, but there was some movement, and just how well he was recovering. And so they wanted him to go to inpatient therapy down there. And it was about the time that all this virus really hit the US. And we were scheduled, they came in, said, okay, you guys are scheduled to go tomorrow morning early, fly out. You have to be there by 1:00 at Seattle or something. And half an hour later, the doctor came in and said, I'm not comfortable with sending you guys to Seattle with all the cases of the virus
Mhm.
there right now. And so we're going to turn tables and we're going to operate, put the piece of his head back in, and we're going to send you home.
Oh, wow.
Like, whoa, that's crazy. And it was disappointing in some way because we were hoping for the inpatient therapy, not feeling confident that we could do that ourselves. Because it requires a lot. I mean, he's 7, he's probably 50, 60 pounds. And to like retrain him to walk and all those things, we're hoping hoping for a little
Help?
yes. Yeah, help. You're right, Steve. Help.
It seems like a huge job, Matthew. The so have you guys become his like physical therapist and retraining him to walk and doing all the things that would have been done down in Seattle?
Yes, we have been. Actually, my wife has done most of that. We've kept in contact with 2 of the therapists from the hospital. Excuse me, and we've done Zoom meetings with them once a week. So there's been like 2 meetings per week, and that's gone really well. But in the course of this, Michael is he's stout, and my wife came up with some hernias, and so she had to get an operation. So now, yeah, it's definitely changed into something that is kind of scary at times.
Mm.
You know, taking care of my wife because she can't pick him up or do any sort of strenuous therapy with him, and I'm trying to help keep that all going, which it gets a little crazy at times.
So you guys have kind of switched roles from not just being parents, but now physical therapists and caregivers.
Yes.
And, so it's what, and then Eba had hernias from picking him up.
Yeah, from picking him up and maybe, over the last year and just probably working with him a lot because you do. I mean, not that he wasn't walking or running before the stroke, but since then, yeah, it's been really hard because he was toilet trained and then, trying to work back into that and getting him in and out of vehicles. Although there's not much traveling, so we haven't done a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's got to be tough. Just shifting gears, I would think, to being a caregiver and having him go back to not being able to walk and or use a toilet. And is that have you gotten through that? Because I know a lot of people would be balking at that. I think probably most of us would find that maybe next to impossible to be able to be in that situation where your kid's way more dependent than he was, a couple months ago. And does my question make sense?
Yeah, it does, and you're right, Steve. It really is. It's been hard. I've complained to God a bit about why is this happening? What it's like, what did Michael ever do, God? Why him? He's the sweetest. Well, he does pester his sister, but he's the sweetest little guy out there, and just like oozes out love from all his pores and his smiles. It's like, why did this happen, God? Especially to Michael. I could understand if it happened to me or something, because I'm a lot worse than he is. But I think dealing with him going back and walking again or trying to get him to walk. It's been difficult. I've been really discouraged a few days and just like, why? It's like, this is crazy. And then we went to a family function, which is legal now here. And Saturday, I think. And seeing Michael's cousins running around and playing, jumping in one of those air houses or one of those bouncy houses, and Michael's not doing that. And a lot of the time he gets around just scooting around on his bottom. And it was hard but yet he's so happy. It's like he's not complaining about it. He's not fussing. He generally has a smile on his face, and he's just really happy. But it was hard. It was hard to see all these other little guys running around, and Michael's not. He's stationary. I can hold his hand and walk with him some, but his right leg, the knee, it's just one of those motor skills that hasn't returned yet, and so it's hard for him to bend his knee.
Oh yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Does the knee not bend?
It does, but it takes a lot to. Sometimes when he's really excited, yeah, it does. He's just like gung ho, man. I gotta get going.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been hard, Steve, to do the therapy. And like I said, my wife has done a lot of it. Just we had a little, I think they call it a gait trainer. You strap him in and he holds on, and just to like teach him to move his right leg. And she's followed him around the kitchen, laps around the kitchen. She's on a stool with legs or with wheels on the bottom, and he's ahead of her and she's trying to help his leg move. And there's M&Ms spaced out around the table, So, but she's really put a lot into it, and it's changed life. But I guess a lot of lives have changed during this time as well, but something different.
I was gonna ask you something, Matthew. I don't know if you want to answer it or not, but I was gonna ask you, what was your real feelings towards God at the beginning of Michael being sick with all this?
That's a good question. I think I was asking a lot of why. I don't know that I was really angry with God. It hurt really bad.
Yeah.
I was crying, and I think it was so interesting that my wife and I had talked just the day prior to all this coming out about trying to feel pain and not just stuff it, not just cover it over, because that's my tendency. I don't like pain. I don't like, and so my feeling towards God, I was just talking to him. I was just crying out to God, please help Michael. Please give the doctors wisdom, and please bring Michael back to us.
Cool.
So, but there was a lot of whys too.
Yeah.
It's like, why is this happening, God? What? I know we're told that everything happens together, or everything happens for a reason and a purpose, but it's, God, I don't see it. And you don't. When you're in the middle of it, you don't.
No, and then here's a weird question for you. Do you think you were talking to God a lot before this happened?
Not as much.
Yeah. I just like how God works things out to get us to start talking to him more.
Yeah.
Even though, I mean, to me, he always has to turn terrible situations into something good, and opening that door for your relationship with him,
Yeah.
he could turn that into it. So I was just curious if that's what happened or not.
Yeah, it definitely.
If
Go
you're
ahead.
still
What?
talking to God or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, still talking to God.
Yeah.
For sure. But yeah, it definitely, I really talked to him a lot in the course of that month, and really, as scary and as stupid and as crazy as everything was, there was a peace. Like, I normally really stress about work and money and everything like that, and it was God just really, I don't know, gave me a peace about it. I wasn't really working. I did a little bit of work during that time, but mainly every day we were at the hospital until they, like the day before he got out, they shut down the hospital because of the virus.
Oh, yeah.
And we couldn't go in. But and it was really neat. Also, our church gave us some money during that time to help offset not working, and that was a real blessing. Yeah, huge.
Yeah.
I like those questions. No, I like, and so cool, Matthew, that you just went to the Lord and you felt that peace, kind of an underlying, even with all the craziness and pain. At the same time, you were feeling peace, right? Is that right, or am I missing it?
I was feeling peace and yeah, a lot of pain, just crying. You just think about it, Michael dancing around, and it's just like, he's not God, and how's it ever going to happen?
Right.
Wow, it is kind of remarkable that you and Eva were talking about experiencing pain and grieving loss, because this is this is a huge loss. Even though he's still with you,
Yeah.
and he's got the same Henri. He's the same Mike. He's kind of defied the odds, where the doctor said he's not going to be the same. But the same kind of Henri, Michael, who will hide your phones, is still with you. And the same guy that loves to dance and who oozes out love is still with you. But there are some things that are different, physically, that he hasn't been able to do. But it's neat that you were it sounds like, still experiencing that pain and not running from it or trying to stuff it.
Yeah, it's harder now because just busy with life and working with Michael and trying to keep things going, and it's easier now to ignore the pain and to be numb. Maybe I think there's some numbness that's there, but yeah, it's
Yeah, I mean, you're going, like Steve said, you're going through the grief stage, even though he's still here. You're going to go through those weird times and hurt and be numb, and grief is a brutal thing sometimes to go through.
Yeah, have you like that? One of the things I can't remember all the stages of grief, except for the one that I always like to go to, which is anger. Have you had any experience just being angry over the situation? And
I've experienced being angry over a situation, being angry over other situations that come up, and whether it's with the kids or my wife or other circumstances. And yeah, and more fear too, because with this. Anyway, I don't mean to take away from your question, Steve.
No, I just go. What do you?
But with this disease he has, the moya disease, you've got two blood veins that go up through the middle of your head, kind of more towards the front, and the left side, they basically restrict and cut off your blood supply. The right side kind of branched out with some other vessels and was doing okay, but the left side didn't, and that's where the stroke was. But in the back of our mind, I think I'm always looking at Michael like, is he okay? Is he having a stroke on his right side now? Because I know, Lord willing, we're going to have another surgery to bypass. What they do is they take some blood veins and a little bit of muscle from on the scalp, and they take it and they put it in on the brain and they sew it in. And the brain actually recruits those blood vessels to like supply it. So they did that on the left side after the stroke, and when they put his skull piece back in. But we're talking about when we're going to have the surgery done on the right side to help alleviate the risk of a stroke on the right side. But we're, giving him aspirin every day to help thin his blood, and Keppra to keep him from having any seizures. So, but yeah, in my mind, something, you see him acting a little differently, and it's like, oh no, is he having a stroke? And I know we took him in. We took him into the hospital again, I think, because of it. It's hard to remember what all has happened, but there was a concern that he was having another issue, and we took him back into the doctor. It was okay. But
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd be running around kind of gun shy myself, wondering when the next shoe is going to drop. If the moya is going to affect the left side, and this is what could happen with the right? I'm sure I'd be asking myself those questions. And you mentioned feeling sometimes angry with the kids or your wife, and so I'm just curious, as going through this experience is really difficult and scary experiences. Just on all outsides accounts, it looks like you and Eva are getting along good, and she's able to, even with having a hernia, take care of him and do everything. But I want to, do my normal question is like, is that true, or is that just like you're putting on a good show here for us on the podcast? I'm pretty sure like Barb and I would probably be thinking about committing murder, like murdering each other, or
So yeah, sometimes it does look like a good show, and we've had tension, problems, arguments. I can't remember anything right off the bat, but yeah, it's definitely been it's not been easy, and there's been conflict and anger and working through and saying I'm sorry, and but it's not perfect, Steve. No.
I'm feeling really close to you now.
Exactly.
If it was perfect, I was like, we are going to have some teaching. We got to have some more men's retreats because I got to get this figured out.
Well, don't definitely have more men's retreats, but we've definitely, it's not been easy. Eba was at the hospital pretty much every night for a month, and I was separate. And so, now we're back together for the last 2 months, pretty much. And so just working through life together and decisions, and communication is a big thing. Me not listening, and however it goes. But yeah, we're not perfect, Steve.
Well, I wasn't looking for perfection. I just threw that out just because I would be thinking, my gosh, number one, it sounds exhausting. She's in the hospital for a month. You're driving back and forth. That whole scenario seems exhausting to me. And when I'm probably not the easiest person to hang out with when I'm not exhausted, but when I'm exhausted, it's like all the filters come off and all the, I kind of changed my idea of, I was accused one time of not being nice by one of my Christian buddies. And I said, well, like, I kind of come to this conclusion about being nice is not a fruit of the Spirit, like nice isn't there. Love, joy, peace, long suffering, those things are there, but nice is not a fruit. And all that niceness kind of goes out the window when I'm exhausted. I would just imagine you guys coming home and being together would be an opportunity, I think, for, like you said, really good communication and to communicate how you're feeling with one another. And it sounds like you've done that, and you have conflicts. I think, that's important. Just to acknowledge we have those conflicts, but you guys have asked for forgiveness or somehow mended that. You're still alive and kicking. She hasn't killed you.
No. Yes.
We haven't seen her picture, so we're not sure about her, but.
Well, those hernias. No. It's, yeah, coming home, and then we've just been home, like with this virus. We're in quarantine, trying to keep safe, keep healthy, keep others from getting anything that we have, which we haven't had anything. But I would say, yeah, Steve, the biggest thing is the communication. It would be easy to think that we'd get everything right, but I have this tendency to think everything and put all the thoughts in my head, but they don't always come out my mouth. And so I'm just sure she's reading my mind and has it all figured out, what's going to happen next. And it doesn't work that way. And so, yeah, things come up.
Well, thanks for sharing that, because I think we kind of all do that, expect people to read our minds, and then when that doesn't happen, I'm really disappointed in those people. It's like, like you should know exactly what I want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Matthew, do you get anything else to add to that? I mean, thank you so much for sharing that story. One thing I did want to say was, the people listening or watching this, if you want to ask for prayer requests, what would they be, if you have any?
Yeah. Sanity for my wife and myself. That we would not lose sight of our daughter in all this focus on Michael.
Oh, yeah.
And that Michael would recover the full use of his right side, and that he wouldn't have another stroke. I mean, that's what we've been praying, just because it's so easy to to just go down the road of the what ifs.
Yeah, definitely.
What if's going to happen, and it can be so scary.
Yeah. Yeah, and we don't want your focus to be what ifs. Just enjoy what you got now. But it is so easy to go down that road.
Right. No, it is. And we are enjoying what we do have right now.
Yeah.
Just Michael, him being able to move, and, he takes advantage of it, right? Because he was right-handed, and now he's got to learn how to eat with his left hand, but
Yeah.
he doesn't. He's like wants help to eat,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
he like makes Eva like fill up his spoon, and then she's like, no, you got to lift my arm up to your mouth, man.
Yeah.
So he's like, she fills up his spoon and she's holding on to it, and he grabs her arm with his left hand, and like,
Oh yeah.
it's just like, yeah, he's human too. He wants
Yeah.
attention.
Yeah.
But we're just,
Yeah.
but we're so rejoicing in his, just the recovery and what God has done.
Yeah.
And just, we've really felt like our church and just friends, just so much support. We, everybody in that hospital ward, I mean, they knew who Michael was. I mean, he was like the favorite little guy.
Yeah.
Everybody, and we had so many visitors, you know, before the whole Corona thing, but they just, there was like this many papers of all the people that came to visit, because everybody had to fill out, you know, are you sick, and you know, all this stuff.
Oh yeah.
There's so many people from the church, and it's just been a real blessing.
Yeah.
Just to have that support.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's wonderful. So you mentioned earlier, Matthew, that like, I would never do this, but you tend to worry about money sometimes. And I'm just curious, having had kind of like massive medical bills myself, did you guys walk away with some massive medical bills just from being a month in the hospital and treatment? And how you doing in terms of that part of the picture?
Well, yeah, God is really taking care of us. I think at this time, Michael's medical stuff was covered, I think, through some Medicaid stuff. And one of Alicia's brothers also set up like a GoFundMe account that helped take care of, just not working and other things that came up. And so that's been a huge blessing, and God's really, he's provided. You know, I think about it some days, I'm like, why? The whys are more like, why, God, have you taken good care of us in all this? And how is it that Michael's recovering? And why, if he's going to recover, why did this happen in the first place, God? But maybe, like you said, Noah, I need to talk with him more.
It's just an idea, that's all.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, Matthew, would you want to share that GoFundMe info with us now?
No, I think we actually closed it down. I think it was up there for a month or two, and I think we almost reached the goal that we had. And so
cool.
I think God's really, really taking care of it. And I really, just once again, just so thankful for friends and family and the church. I mean, there were so many people from church just came and showed up and brought food, and it was really amazing. God really took care of it. And so, yeah, I think in some ways, just the worry, he took care of. It was like I didn't have to worry, and he like took care of things. And it's easy to go back there and want to pick up that worry, you know, wherever I dropped it. But I think right now I'm just trying to trust, even through all the crazy stuff with the virus, and as I'm sure you guys are too.
Yeah, it's definitely different.
Yeah.
I really like what you just said, Matthew, and I think that's for me just remarkable after all you've been through in the last few months. For you to say, I don't have to worry, really. And he takes care of things. Wow, what a great message for me to hear, that I could go back and pick it up if I wanted to, but I really don't have to. Man, that's seems for me really life-giving.
Mm-hmm.
What a great message do you have for me today. Thank you.
Not to say, you're welcome, Steve. Thank you. It's not to say I won't go back and pick it up though, because
Sure.
Yeah.
It's me that makes things run in life, and so I gotta pick up that worry and carry it.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, that's why I like hanging out with you. You're super. I get to see Christ in you, and I get to see him in a perfectly human guy, and I just appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, thanks, Steve.
So Noah, maybe you have any other questions or comments that?
I don't think so. I think I got it all. I hammered him as much as I could about relationship with God.
It's good.
Well, maybe sometime we'll get to see Eva on here if she's still alive, or she doesn't have to have another hernia from. You guys are in Alaska. You're probably she's out chopping firewood when she's not being physical therapist and mom and wife and teacher.
Yeah, she's a very talented person. Yes.
Yes. I would agree.
Well, if she's not listening right now, so I'll say I know she married this really incredible guy too, and a big-hearted, generous person who's. It's really cool how you guys are together and growing and learning and trusting.
Mm-hmm.
So just a great example and model for me.
Well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate your encouragement and your questions. They're good. I like them.
Well, thanks for being so generous in your answers.
Anytime.
Well, thanks a lot, Matthew, for just telling us your last couple month journey, walking with the Lord and all of this. It's encouraging to me. I know it's encouraging to Steve. So just thanks for everything you said. I always like doing these podcasts because then I can spend the rest of the day just thinking about them and thanking the Lord for it. So just thank you for being willing to get on here with us and do it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Noah and Steve, for inviting me. I enjoyed it. Enjoyed being with you guys. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you for listening. Steve, you got anything else?
Oh, just grateful to be with you guys. Just so thrilled. Feeling really great to be with you.
Yeah, maybe someday we can do a podcast like this actually all together. That'd be nice.
Yeah. That'd be fun.
All right. Love you guys.
All right. Love you too. Thanks.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.